Hi guys, welcome to my first tutorial video for Platform 1 MRC. In this short video I'll show you how I weather a 16 tonne mineral wagon. I've been asked by some of our members of Platform 1 to do a short tutorial. So first up I'll show you what you're going to need. Over here on our left we've just got a basic matte spray. Anything will do as long as it's matte. The one beside it's just tested. It's basically like a dull coat. Isopropyl alcohol, black wash, a couple of containers just for mixing your powders up in, a sponge, of course the old cotton tips, a few toothpicks, a couple of paintbrushes. As you can see we've got a couple of different sizes here. This flat one's great for creating streaks. The red tarnished one, which is one of my favourites, is great for just dabbing powders on here and there. Another fairly tarnished smaller brush for getting into that you could say the tighter areas around the chassis and what have you, and just occasionally just a fine brush for picking anything out that needs to be done. Now the powders that I use are a bunch of cars weathering powders, as can be seen here. You know, there's a couple of colours of grey, orange rust, red rust, the tan or dirt, a black, and of course what we do need is our donor wagon, which is a Bachmann 16 tonne mineral wagon. This has already been pre-weathered, factory finished, but we're just going to add to it. Alright, well I've just come back inside from spraying the wagon with the Testor's clear enamel. As can be seen on the inside, it's still a little bit damp, a little bit shiny. It will dry to a fairly substantial matte finish, so don't be afraid that you think it's going to look all shiny and new like a new toy. I guess I can tell you now it won't. When you do spray, make sure you take out your couplings and your wheels, as you don't want to be fouling them up in the long run. Okay, now the wagon is dried suitably enough, and what I'm going to do is use this little bit of black wash here, just a few drops up around the top of the frames, top of the wagon there, and we're just going to use a sponge, just a bit of sponge. Let's just bring that in and get it around here and there, just a dab. Doesn't have to be too precise at the moment, you know, we're just going to get a little bit of a black staining in around where we need to stain it. While you're there, throwing a little bit around the doorway, the openings there, sponge it in. Like I said, doesn't have to be too precise. Tend to drag it up under the frames. You'll find that a lot of gunk and rubbish tends to settle under there, so we'll leave that like that. Now you can go around and do the other side of the frame, but just for this purpose I'll just do this side to start with anyway, just to get your rundown on it. Okay, inside the little container here we've got a mix of the orange rust and a bit of the black dust. Now we're just going to mix that together just to give us a bit of a dirty brown colour, like a burnt rust, you could say, dirty rust. Yeah, that should do it. Now while we've got it into that consistency there, a little bit of isopropyl alcohol goes a long way here. This is where the trick starts. What you do, just a couple of sprays, just enough to wet the bottom of the container, just throw some in there. Using your flat brush, what we'll do, dip in into the dust. Now we're just going to draw it up into here. Yep, it looks bloody awful right now, but you know, this will settle into a nice rusty colour. Just bring it right up into your frames. Just keep the brush damp with a bit of dust on there, and what we'll do, we'll end up with this caked on muck look, you could say. This will all be highlighted later on, so a little bit more isopropyl, a bit more dust, and we just throw it in through there. If it does come on a little bit thick like you can see here, just use a brush, just drag it back down underneath. Okay, and that should just about do it there. A little bit more just in between some of this framing section here, just highlight it a little bit. As you can see now it's starting to dry, you're starting to get this red colour through it. That red will you know, lighten up a lot more, the black should disappear a little bit, but you're starting to get that real weathered look almost instantly. If you're unhappy about these larger chunks up here, just give it a bit of a flick. Now that's where the smaller brush comes in handy. Using this one, you can just brush that through. Just knock that around a little bit. Now this will settle right into the clear coat that we've applied earlier. To get a little bit more depth into it, it's always good to have a little bit of red rust, or the orange rust now. We're going to apply a little bit more of that. I'm just going to decant a little bit of the rust onto this container here, onto the lid, just using the my favourite paintbrush. Just pop that one aside. Just a little bit of dust on there. That's probably more than enough. And what we can do, just tap that off the brush. We don't need a lot on there, and just dab here and there. This will settle into what we've already applied. May need a little bit more here and there. Now, don't go too bright a colour. If you're not happy with it, just give it a tap. Have a look at it. Tap your brush off. Give it a bit of a blow. Just see how we come up with that. That's not looking too bad. Maybe a little bit heavy in some areas, especially around the middle here and all that. So what we'll do, we'll give that brush a tap. We'll just draw some of this down. This is what gives you a bit of the streaking as well. You can see that sort of happening there already. And as you can see, that's almost dried up onto the wagon as it is. So it's not looking too bad. I mean, it's a pretty simple technique, and you're starting to get fairly decent results. Okay, now we've allowed this to dry a little bit across the body and all that. You know, the streakings come out fairly heavy in through there. If you did want a little bit more of this heavier rust look that we've got up here into the other corners, just dip your brush into the isopropyl, pick up some of the red, and just drag back up into there. Doesn't matter if it runs down the corner of the wagon like that. Staining does do that, rust does do that, so we can just put a little bit into there. Now if you're really unhappy about it, you can always take your sponge there and just give it a bit of a drag down as well. That'll create a bit more of a streaky look to it. And once we allow that to dry, you'll see the runoff stains. It'll start to dry almost immediately. Also, putting the powders on with the isopropyl actually helps you to build up some rust layers in there. Now while we've got the brush dampened with the red rust colour, we'll just take up some more of this powder here, and we're going to patina the inside of the wagon just by dabbing it through like so. Just randomly, just put it in there, you know. Once it dries, you'll notice that it gets a nicer finish to it. Don't think you're putting it on too thick either. Just run around the whole thing on the inside everywhere. As you know, it dries a little bit lighter. Just take a bit off the base of the floor there. Just run through. Do the end of the wagon up here. And what we can do, we can also pick up some of the original darker black that we had in there before, that we used on the outside frame. So we'll just dab in here again. We're going to tip a little bit of that out onto the palette here. We'll call it a palette anyway. Not too much. Just pick that up. It's a bit darker, as you can see, than that. And we'll just dab that into the corners and that. Just throw it in around the base here. Looks like some staining from the load that's been in there. You can build it up into the corners a little bit. Run it back through, across the floor. Just run it down the other side of the frame inside there. Just doesn't have to be too much, you know, just here, there, whatever. And we'll probably leave it at that. We'll allow that to dry a little bit longer. Just tab a bit more in there while I'm at it. Okay. Now, once that dries up, you'll see it will give a fairly rough textured look in there, like it's been stained with any materials and all that. Depending what it's carrying, you know, it could be carrying coal, it could be carrying, you know, metals, bauxites, whatever it may be. We'll just let that go off for a moment. Pull my brush down. As you can see, it's starting to dry up already in there. It's starting to get that patinaed finish on the body. Okay, we've given the inside of the body a little bit of time to dry. I don't know if you can see that in there, but it has given us an effect through there of a fairly weather-beaten mineral beaten interior. So what we're going to do is concentrate on our all the framing underneath here. Now that's a fairly simple affair, you know. What we'll do is a little bit more of our isopropyl in our container here. So we'll mostly concentrate on either the more of the blacky brown. Now what I want to do is streak under here. Doesn't matter how thick you put it on. Just throw it onto the running gear and all that underneath there. It will dry. Just a little bit around your buffers on the ends. And then while it's still damp, we'll just sponge that off there. We'll pick up some of this red, or I should say orange, and we're just going to highlight some of the springs while it's still damp with the isopropyl. Now you can also run just up under the chassis here, just dab dab dab. Nothing too much, you don't have to go too hard under here, you know, it's just a highlight, pick out a few things. I think we'll leave it at that and we'll wait to see how it dries. Give a bit of blow and that'll start the drying process fairly quickly. Okay, the brake handle here, you know, you can dab a bit more white paint on there when you finish, but at the moment what I might do is just run my finger over it, and your finger will actually take it off before the isopropyl dries and adheres to the clear matte varnish underneath. Just a little bit more down, mate, around these brake shoes. Just pick up a bit more isopropyl, a bit more colour, and we'll just dab them on here under the brake shoes there. Just highlight these springs a little bit more underneath here, which some of the areas hard to get into, so this is where I'll swap brush. I'll go back to that fine brush now. Just pick up some of this and we'll just touch up these springs in here. Yeah, we won't go any more than that, we don't want to spoil it. With weathering, the best thing to know is know when to stop. If you're unsure, just stop, let the model dry, see how it looks. If you're unhappy with it, you can always make changes. The isopropyl alcohol allows you to go through, especially in the spray bottle as such, spray a little bit on the area that you don't really like and just wipe it down with a sponge and it'll take all the isopropyl off. It may taint the wagon a little bit, but don't be too concerned because another application I should say of powders will fix that up. Now I'm pretty happy with that. Now what we'll do, we'll just turn around to the other side, the clean side, and that's what we started with. You know, so we've gone from a fairly clean, you could say factory finish, weathered finish, or factory finished, to a much more weather beaten finish that we have here. Well, that's about it for now. We can throw the wheels back in, throw the couplers back on, and she's ready for surface I should say. Now one thing I will show you is the powders don't come off onto your finger. That's the beauty of the isopropyl and the matte spray underneath that we first applied. Okay, hope you learned something. Hope you found it fairly easy, fairly simple. There was no trick in time here. It was done within a matter of minutes. So a few wagons could be knocked up in, you know, a couple of hours. I mean, if you had 10 or 12 wagons there, you know, maybe an hour, use the same sort of application techniques right through, and you can have some weather beaten stock. Thanks for watching. Cheers.